What's up everyone, today I want to talk about one of the best endgame Sorcerer builds in Season 4 after the most recent patch. And it is a Blizzard Sorcerer build that is almost immortal. Blizzard has always been one of the best endgame builds this season, and after the most recent patch, it is even better. I've been farming tier 100 pits all morning just back to back, and it's fast, it's fun, and you're basically untouchable. You can just zip from start to finish and just destroy everything. I don't have the best gear on this build, and I can easily clear like 115s comfortably. With the right gear, some big greater affixes in the right places, fully masterworked, you could take this so much higher. On top of this, it has really good single target damage, unlike some other builds like Frozen Orb, which sort of starts to fall off on single targets, which means you can take on Tormented, Uber Bosses, things like that. So let's talk about the build and the playstyle. It's all about Blizzard and Ice Spike. We use the Glacial aspect, which means that when you cast a Blizzard, Ice Spikes will rise out of the ground. And they stack on top of each other, so you can just put more and more down and you get more and more Ice Spikes. And then we combine that with aspect of the Frozen Tundra, which increases their damage and makes them burst into a big AoE, which is why it's so, you see all these numbers on these big packs. And then we temper all of our gear with extra Ice Spike damage to rack this up into the millions. We then layer just Blizzard on Blizzard on Blizzard and watch everything freeze and everything crumble. On top of this, we make use of the Ice Blade's cooldown reduction trick to give us almost permanent uptime on our fire shield, meaning we're almost immortal. So let's break down the build fully and explain everything. Okay, now let's talk through the skill tree. So if we start at the top, we put 2 points into Firebolt to unlock the next section. In the next section, we don't take any core skills, so don't worry about any core skills, but you have to put 4 points here to unlock the next area. So you can do 3 points in Potent Warding. This is juice now, it's just more resistances. So 3 points in there, 1 point in Devastation for mana. Over here are defensives. Now, I've got a lot here coming from gear. I've got Harlequin's Crest, which gives like 4 to everything. And then I've got a chest piece that gives like 3 to all or 4 to all defenses. So that's really juiced out here. But all we actually put in is 1 point in Ice Armor, 1 point in Teleport, and then 5 points in Flame Shield. And I'll explain why. So if we go bottom to top, Ice Armor, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. While Ice Armor is active, you reduce its cooldown, meaning you get it back faster. Teleport, 1 point into Enhance for movement speed, 1 point into Shimmering for a damage reduction. This is, we use a leg piece, Talbot's Will, which means we get mana back whenever we use this. So we want to use this often, and when we use it, we get movement speed and damage reduction. So it's a really good like defensive that you might not think. And then Flame Shield, this is the juice. Everything comes from this. And the reason we want so many points in it, I'll show you. It doesn't change the cooldown, but if the more points you get in, look, we go from engulf yourself in flames for 3.4 seconds to 3.87 seconds. And if I take my gear off real quick, if I take like my head off and my chest off, look at the difference here. 1 point, it's a 2-second shield. And then you put your gear on and it goes to nearly a 4-second shield. So we're nearly doubling it if you get the right stats. And the reason that's so important is because this is how we stay alive. We stay alive with our barriers. So if you can have good cooldown reduction, I think I've got about 50% cooldown reduction right now. You get to a point where you have this long fire shield, it lasts for 4 seconds. And then when it's done, it might be back off cooldown. If it's not back off cooldown, you've got this. And with this, that comes off cooldown too fast. So you almost always have a shield ready when you need one. As soon as you see your shield come off, you press fire shield or ice shield and they'll go straight back on. So that's why we call it an immortal build, because it's like a permanent shield. It's a constant shield. So yeah, that's why defensives are so important and why I've got so many points here. Okay, then we take Glass Cannon. You deal more damage and take more damage. Now this got buffed in the recent patch. You used to take more damage from this. That used to be quite risky, but now it's great. You deal 18% more damage, but you only take 6. So it's incredible. I would take as much of this as you can get, 3 out of 3 it. If you can get it on your amulet, I'd start taking it now. It's actually huge. So this is fantastic. One of the best, passives in the game for us now. As we come down into here, the Ice Blade trick. I've talked about this in every video. 1 point in here, 1 point here, 1 point here. The way this works is we enhance this with an enchantment. So when we attack, as we use cooldowns, we summon an Ice Blade. The more Ice Blades we have out, they reduce the cooldowns of our other skills. So you get to a point where you have like 5 Ice Blades out, just a boss, and then all our cooldowns just start coming back really, really fast, which you'll see in the intro. All the cooldowns just like zooming back really fast. We take 1 point in Lightning Spear and 1 point in Enhanced Lightning Spear. We don't really care about lightning, but we use it for triggering our ring, which is the Talrash's Iridescent Loop, which is for each elemental type you can put on an enemy, you deal more damage. So that's huge because lightning, fire, ice, all that sort of stuff, all racks up to be different damage types. Then we want to... I'll talk passives after. We'll just keep going through the main ones. Blizzard. 1 point in Blizzard. We put 1 point in Blizzard, 1 point into enhanced and 1 point into mage's blizzard to give increased duration of blizzard. It sounds silly that we're going to put 1 point in blizzard and a blizzard build, but all our damage is coming from the ice spikes that rise up from the blizzard. So you don't get any from putting more points in there, so 1 is enough. And then down into here, we don't take any ultimate. So that's all of the things. Let's talk about the passives. So here, 1 point in lucky hit. You can put more in here if you want. If I had more points, I would. 3 points into conjuration mastery. Damage, movement speed, and mana regeneration for each active conjuration. We get up to like 5 ice blades, which is incredible, and we have the lightning spear. This is just a good damage boost, good mana regeneration. There's a mana hungry build as well, which is great. Into our defensives here, 2 points into mana shield for damage reduction, 1 point into barrier. This might be better, but I like a little split here. Down into here, 3 points into icy veil. Your barriers have an increased duration, and 1 point into there for a bit more chill. Again, if you had enough points, you'd max all that, max all this. But I spread them around. Into here, Inner Flames, your pyromancy skills did increase damage, so we can get to this. You deal increased crit strike to enemies if they're crowd controlled. This is increased to 30%. This is a powerhouse. This is a big damage dealer. If you can get on your amulet, points in this, and points in glass cannon, damage. These are the two I'd be looking for after the recent patch. I think they're incredible. Down into here, max this out as much as you can. 3, 3, 3, 2. 3, 3, 3, 2. So yeah, increased damage to elites, increased cold damage to vulnerable, increased damage to chilled, and then lucky hit, cold damage against vulnerable enemies can regenerate your mana. I'd say as your mana starts becoming less of a problem, if you feel like you've solved mana issues, you can start peeling points away and putting them, up here for your defenses. But yeah, this is the build as I have it. I think it works well like this, but the passives can definitely be moved around if you feel like your gear gives you a different point of play to me. But this works best for me. Down into here, key passives. Blizzard have broke the key passives pretty much every patch, and that doesn't seem to be changing. So in most of my recent builds, I had it as Essu's Ferocity because it was broken and it was so good. They fixed that now, so we don't really want to take that. So we're kind of left between Shatter and Veer's Mastery, which doesn't make any sense. Shatter, for some reason, is incredible on AoE. It's incredible, but it isn't seeming to work on bosses. So it doesn't seem to do anything on bosses right now. I've tested it. I've tried it on bosses. I've tried it on training dummies, and it doesn't seem to give us a damage boost on bosses. I don't know why. Let me know in the comments if I'm doing something wrong, but it doesn't seem to do anything. This does. You deal increased damage. Your shock skills deal increased damage, and enemies deal less damage to you. That's why we want this. So we don't really care about the shock damage, but enemies dealing less damage to you is fantastic as we're pushing high in the pit. Crit strikes increase these bonuses to 25%. 25% damage reduction is incredible. So this feels like the best thing down here. But yeah, that's the skill tree. Okay, now for enchantments. And this is what I run. Now, there's a lot you can do here. I've got different variants of this in the build that's linked down below, but this is what I'm running right now and what I think is the best. Let me know if you find something that works better, but this is what I like. Firebolt. So Firebolt is direct damage from skills, applies an additional burning damage over time. Now that's good because as we trigger burning damage, we get all of the buffs that come from, when an enemy is burning, to burning enemies. So damage reductions, damage increases, crit strike, all that sort of stuff, we get the buff from this. And then secondly, Ice Blades, the cooldown reduction. I think it's like every 40 seconds in cooldowns you summon an Ice Blade on a random enemy. Incredible. This is why when we get to bosses, we can just throw out loads of them and we get all the buffs from having conjurations, and then we get, the cooldown reduction, which is why you see all the cooldowns come back so fast. Now, there's other things you can do here. You can use Hydra as a way to apply burn instead of this. But I think this works better because, we get a lot more burn that way. And then you can try Frozen Orb. That works pretty well. There's a lot of variety here, but this is what I think is the best right now. Okay, now let's talk about the gear, the aspects, the tempering, everything gear related. I'm going to use the build that I've linked down below. This is the build I've made. We've gone over it a few times, different versions of it. And this is the big endgame variant here, the Immortal endgame 110 plus farming build. It is the best version of it I've got so far. So this is what we're talking about. If you're looking for something a bit faster with like a two-handed weapon for clearing lower pits just faster, there's versions here. But this is what we're talking about today, the big endgame one. Okay, so on the helmet, we go Harlequin's Crest. Damage reduction, in addition, gain +4 ranks to all skills. It's incredible. It's an Uber Unique, but in Season 4, we can craft Uber Uniques. So I would get that every time. It's so good. If you're struggling to get it or you're still working towards it, the Godslayer Crown is pretty good, or the Snow Guards aspect is pretty good on the helmet while you're waiting. That's what I used. On the chest, Concentration. Every conjuration you cast gives you damage reduction. Perfect. Frozen Tundra. Now this looks stupid at the start because we don't use Deep Freeze, but the bottom section, your ice spikes have 50% increased explosion radius, is where we see that big burst damage. On the legs, Tibalt's Will. Every time you become unstoppable, you gain increased damage. And then you gain 50 of your primary resource. That means that every time you cast Teleport and every time you cast Flame Shield, you gain 50 of your main resource, meaning we don't have a mana problem. Mana is just not an issue. With the amount of cooldown reduction we get from this build, we don't have a mana we don't have a mana problem at all. On the feet, we have Esu's Heirloom. You don't get that much good on the feet, but this is good, so we may as well use this one. Movement speed, mana reduction, crit strike is increased by your movement speed. It's nice. There's, you know, the foot slot is not the best one, so this is a good one to have there. And then, okay, on a Blizzard build, the best thing you can do is put Glacial on a two-hander. And that's what I've done in all my Blizzard builds before. However, because we're pushing so high, we need as much defense as we can get, and we need as much cooldown as we can get. So for that reason, we use an offhand that gives cooldown reduction. We can't get it on a two-handed weapon. So we have to go for a one-hand and an offhand. So yeah, unfortunately, we do lose a bit of damage having the Glacial aspect on an amulet instead of on a weapon. It's 150% boot bonus on an amulet, 200% on a two-handed weapon. So we are taking a damage hit here, but we're getting the immortalness. You know, we're getting the push so far because you constantly have a shield. So that's why we do that. We go Conceited, increase damage when you have a barrier, and then we go Shredding Blades. Ice chance to apply vulnerable is increased by 20%, duration is increased, and you gain increased vuln damage. Incredible. Glacial, as we've mentioned, that's your ice spike damage, increased damage to frozen enemies. That makes the ice spikes happen. And then on the rings, Tal, Rashar's Iridescent Loop. For each type of elemental damage you deal, gain increased damage for 4 seconds, dealing damage refreshes or bonuses, capped at 4 elements. And we have Fire, Ice, Lightning, and I'll show you something in the Tempering that also gives us Shadow or Poison. So you can get all 4. Storm Spell aspect, increased damage to vulnerable enemies while you have a barrier. We always have a barrier. So yeah, that's the aspects. Okay, now let's talk about affixes and tempering. And I can't stress enough how important the right affixes and the right tempering is this season. It is night and day difference how good a build is if you set it up right. So let's go through affixes first. And the most important ones are the ones that give plus stat bonuses. This is color coded as well to show which ones you should probably try and like masterwork and get like hit with your masterwork in. Number 1 ranks the Flame Shield. This is how you become immortal. Get Flame Shield and get it as high as you can. If you get a greater affix on Flame Shield and masterwork it, the Flame Shield lasts longer, right? So huge. I will say I've not been able to do that. So I've got like +4 defense, +3 or 4 all defenses, which is pretty good. You know, that includes Flame Shield. So do that if you can get it, but try and get Flame Shield. Then you want to get on your neck Glass Cannon and Devouring Blaze. They are just huge damage boosts with very little downside. So try and get those like if you can. I've got hundreds of hours on my Sorcerer and I have not been able to find these. So good luck. I've rolled like a 2 Glass Cannon and a 1 Devouring Blaze, but it's not as good as, you know, the greater affix one I've got right now. So that's something to really work towards on this build. And then let's talk about the others. So attack speed is huge. Everywhere you can get attack speed, try and get it, and temper it where you can. You know, like everywhere you can get attack speed, try and get it. The other one is cooldown reduction. Anywhere you can get cooldown reduction, get it, and temper it if it's not key. So cooldown reduction on the amulet, cooldown reduction on the offhand, massive. You also get it on your Harlequin's Crest, so perfect. Then you want to get armor to hit the 9,000 armor cap where you can. Intelligence, because that scales really well with our ice spike damage, crit strike, lucky hit, attack speed. All those things are really good. I've got a thing here with like the best for each slot that you can try and work towards if that helps. But do try and keep track of your own stats. You know, if your armor is at 10,000, don't get armor on your chest, right? If your mana's completely fine, don't worry about mana stuff. If your attack speed is so high that you're running out of mana, then you've got other problems. So this works really well for me and is what I would recommend. But just keep in mind what you need for your build if you've like masterworked something different or something falls in a different way. Okay, now let's talk about the tempering. So because we can't just dump all our points, say you're doing a Frozen Orb build, you can just get loads of points in Frozen Orb in your skill tree and have like, 12 out of something Frozen Orb. We can't do that because we don't have anything in our skill tree that boosts it. So we have to rely on intelligence. We have to rely on this here. Offensive aspect, offensive temper, ice spike damage. So every single slot you can get, you want to get ice spike damage and you want to try and get a max roll. It's so important. So that's key. It comes on your amulet, it comes on your glove, your ring, and your both of your weapons. So ice spike damage and a good roll on ice spike damage is so good. And if you temper and it hits ice spike damage, congratulations. That's something I'd really, really be going for everywhere you can get it. The other things that are really good is Flame Shield duration. We've talked about making this immortal, having as much Flame Shield duration as possible. So that's really good. The other big thing here, we mentioned Tao's Ring. You need to hit 4 different elements. And on the weapon, you can get this. Lucky hit, up to a 40% chance to deal shadow damage. And there's in this elemental surge section under weapon, you can hit like fire damage, ice damage, lightning, shadow, or poison, something like that. And you want to land on either shadow or poison, and that's your 4th element. So try and get that on your weapon. Other than that, there's nothing that important. You can get like life if you need life. There's barrier generation, which is kind of useful in this build. Ice Blade cooldown's pretty cool. Blizzard size is pretty good for clearing packs, and especially on like things that jump out of them. But yeah, that's it. This is all there if you want to use it. Obviously, you can't roll on uniques. You can't temper. You can't do anything with that. So they're just as they come. But yeah, this is how I'm enjoying this build now, and it works really, really well. The only other thing is the gems for your gear. Emeralds on the weapon for crit strike damage, and skulls for armor on your jewelry. On the armor, you have a choice. You can go, I think, rubies for health, or you can go topaz for intelligence. It's up to you. If you're feeling squishy, and while you're leveling and all that, or while you're like progressing and working out your gear, I would go for red. I think rubies are red. Rubies for life. That gives you a huge boost in your life. However, once you feel like you're starting to get this immortalness where you're constantly having a shield up, you can actually dump out a lot of that health for intelligence for more damage, because you always have the shields. So I've started moving into that now. I've just switched over from all rubies to all topazes, and the damage boost is lovely. So that's something you can do. Okay, finally, the Paragon Board. So let's talk about the Paragon Board. Okay, I have changed the Paragon Board from the last Blizzard video I did. I've only tweaked it a little bit. If you look at the last one and this one, they're fairly similar. There's not that much difference. I've just trimmed them down in certain areas. Everything like kind of looks the same. I've trimmed them down, moved some of the glyphs around, and added a squeezed points out to get an extra 8th board. But generally, if you followed the last Blizzard build, you don't really have to change much. You probably move around like 10, 15 points and move that glyph there, that glyph there, that kind of thing. So let's roughly talk through it. So starter board, we go Tactician in the main node for increased damage to all rare nodes, such as the resistance to elements and the increased non-physical damage. We run it, and then we also get increased damage after casting a defensive skill, which is fantastic because we cast one like every 2 seconds. Move up to the next board, we go Frigid Fate board, and we get the Stalagmite GIF. Is that Stalagmite? This is our Ice Spike damage. Every 5 points increases your Ice Spike damage, and your Ice Spikes gain crit strike. It's incredible. We want to hit that, the 40 in all around it. I've got like 65 points in there, so I'm getting a bit of extra in as well. Extra damage. And then you want to go and get the Frigid Fate legendary node as well. And then you go out to the left and out to the right. Let's talk left first. You come out to the left, and I've gone Searing Heat board. We come all the way down. Flame Feeder. Every 5 decks increases damage to burning targets. We have the Firebolt enchantment. So we get that. And you deal increased damage to burning enemies. Doesn't matter that we're only dealing like 1 damage to these enemies to make them burning, but we get all of that bonus from having them burning. We want to move on down into this board. We go Ceaseless Conduit board, rotate it like this, and we put the Exploit glyph in, increase damage to vulnerable targets. Dealing damage increases your damage to them. Get all the nodes to hit that. Down again. In here, we drop the Elementalist. So dealing damage increases the damage they take from you. We come down, we go Static Surge, and we drop Destruction. Now, one thing you'll notice in here is we're not really doing much in the boards. As we're going further on, we just want to get as many glyphs as possible. That's why I've got an 8 glyph board. There's only like 2 legendary nodes we take, but we want to get as many of these glyphs as possible because they scale so much better at endgame than like running all the way up here for a node, right? So that's up there, and then back to the start, or back to this like splitter, we got this side here. We go Burning Instinct, and we go Winter. Winter is increased rare nodes, which is like increased damage to burning enemies and damage reduction from burning enemies, and then Winter increases damage against cold enemies. Yeah, deal increased cold damage even. Then we go up to here, we go Icefall, and we drop the Reinforced glyph. We don't really take much from this. We don't really take the bonus, but we get the additional bonus of 15% damage reduction while you have a barrier. And then we run up the left side, and we get Icefall, increased damage to vulnerable enemies. That's this. 8 boards, 8 nodes. I've changed this a lot, and I've gone through a lot of different versions of this, but I feel like this is the best so far. Could you cheese it and try and get a 9? I don't know. I feel like this is already pretty tight. Should you take one off and put more points in? Maybe. But I think this is the best it's been, and I'm having the most success with it like this. So that's the Paragon board. But yeah, that's everything really. This is the build. It's all linked down below. Everything's here. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy it. Sorcerer is, you know, you just got to accept we're all born different, and Sorcerer is not very strong. Sorcerer's not as good as Barbarian. Just admit it. You know, they're the Chads. They're pushing 150 pits. Yeah, they're doing like 100 while they're leveling. But, you know, we're a Sorcerer, and we got to do what we can do, and we can do 110 pit. You know, we can push it higher. We can do 120 pit. We got to grind harder, but we can do it. And this is one of the builds that can do it. So yeah, this is it. I hope you enjoy the build. If you like this kind of video, subscribe for more. Discord's link, Twitch's link, all that stuff. That's the video. Take care. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.